Autumn Blake was still gasping from the pain of hot coffee searing her skin. Valentina Greco was still laughing at the pregnant waitress she'd just humiliated. And Enzo Salvatore, the Mafia boss, who'd walked in expecting to meet his fiancée for breakfast, stood frozen in the doorway of Bellano Cafe, processing a scene that would end an engagement, destroy a woman's life, and resurrect a secret he'd thought was buried 7 months ago. But that collision came later. 3 hours earlier, Autumn had woken to her alarm at 5 in the morning with her lower back screaming and her ankles already swollen before her feet touched the floor. 6 months pregnant, single, working doubles when her body begged for rest because the rent came due whether she could stand or not. She dressed in the dark of her studio apartment, the only sound her own breathing and the groan of old pipes in the walls. No partner sleeping beside her, no family to call, just Autumn and the life growing inside her that she'd protect with everything she had left. The subway ride to Bellano Cafe took 40 minutes. She stood the entire way because sitting meant struggling to stand again when her stop came. Around her, Manhattan commuters buried their faces in phones and newspapers. Nobody offered their seat to a pregnant woman at 5:45 in the morning. Nobody saw her at all. That invisibility followed her through the cafe's back entrance at 6:15. She tied her apron over her expanding middle, wincing as the strings dug into her hips. The other servers offered sympathetic smiles but no real help. Tips were tips, tables were territory. Pregnant or not, Autumn was on her own. Bellano Cafe occupied prime real estate in Manhattan's financial district. The clientele arrived in tailored suits and carried briefcases worth more than Autumn made in 3 months. They ordered espresso drinks with names she'd had to memorize, speaking in shorthand about markets and mergers while she refilled water glasses they barely noticed. She was furniture to them, useful when needed, invisible otherwise. Her shift supervisor, a woman named Gina who wore exhaustion like a second skin, had given Autumn the window section. Good light, high visibility, better tips theoretically, but Autumn knew the real reason. Pregnant women made wealthy people uncomfortable. Better to position her where she could be seen from outside. Proof that Bellano Cafe employed real people with real problems. A little authenticity to season their overpriced lattes. By 8 o'clock, Autumn's feet had gone numb. She'd learned to recognize the signs. The tingling that meant she'd been standing too long. The way her vision would blur at the edges if she moved too fast. She kept working anyway, smiling anyway, saying right away, sir, and of course, ma'am, to people who never learned her name. A businessman at table 6 snapped his fingers for her attention. She turned, smiled, took his order for a third cappuccino. He never looked at her face, just her stomach, then away, as if pregnancy was something mildly distasteful he'd rather not acknowledge. She delivered the cappuccino with steady hands despite the ache climbing her spine. He left a 7% tip. The morning stretched on. More suits. More coffee, more invisible labour performed by invisible hands. Autumn's body kept a running count of every insult. The weight of the tray pulling at her shoulders, the pressure in her pelvis that meant the baby was sitting low, the way her uniform clung to her in places it hadn't last month. Nobody asked if she needed to sit down. Nobody offered to cover a table so she could rest. This was the bargain she'd made with survival. Work until you can't, then work some more, because the alternative was worse. She was refilling the sugar dispensers at the wait station when she felt it. That prickle at the back of her neck, the atmospheric shift that meant someone important had entered. The cafe's energy changed. Conversations dipped to murmurs. Heads turned. Autumn looked up. A woman stood near the entrance, flanked by 2 others dressed in designer labels and dismissive expressions. But it was the woman in the center who commanded attention. Dark hair, perfect makeup, a smile that belonged on magazine covers and courtroom battles. She moved through the cafe like she owned not just the space but everyone in it. Gina appeared at Autumn's elbow, voice low and urgent. That's Valentina Greco. Treat her like royalty or we'll both regret it.
Autumn's stomach tightened.
She'd heard the name before. Everyone who worked in this part of Manhattan had. Old money, older connections. The kind of woman who could ruin your life with a phone call if you served her coffee wrong. Valentina chose a table by the window. Prime location, maximum visibility. Her companions settled in like they were preparing for a performance, and Autumn realized with sinking certainty that she was about to become part of their show. She approached with her order pad and her professional smile, the one that hid everything real beneath a surface of pleasant servitude. Good morning. What can I get for you? Valentina's eyes swept over her, lingered on her stomach. The smile that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Coffee, Valentina said, black, and do try not to spill it. Her friends laughed. Autumn's hand tightened on her pen. She took the order, walked to the bar, poured 3 coffees with hands that refused to shake despite everything in her screaming to run. She knew how this story went. She'd been invisible her whole life. She knew what happened when people like Valentina noticed people like her. Nothing good. She loaded the coffees onto her tray and walked back toward the table, each step measured and careful. The cafe continued around her, oblivious, just another pregnant waitress serving another table. Nothing remarkable, nothing worth noting. The door opened and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Autumn set the tray down at their table with practiced precision, 3 coffee cups arranged in perfect alignment. She'd learned long ago that presentation mattered to people like this. Everything was a test. Everything was theatre. Valentina Greco didn't acknowledge her. She was mid-sentence with her companions. Something about a yacht in the Mediterranean and how disappointing the crew had been. Her voice carried that particular quality of women who'd never been told no, who measured their worth in zeros on bank statements and the envy of others. She was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful. Flawless skin that spoke of dermatologists and monthly facials. Hair that fell in perfect waves. The kind achieved only through standing appointments at salons where Autumn's monthly rent wouldn't cover a single session. Her dress was cream silk, probably cost more than Autumn's car back when she'd had a car to sell. But it was her eyes that told the real story. Cold. Assessing. The eyes of someone who'd spent a lifetime categorizing people into 2 groups. Useful and beneath notice. Autumn placed the first cup in front of Valentina. "Your coffee, ma'am." Valentina glanced at it, then at Autumn's belly, then back to her friends. "I was just saying how standards have really declined everywhere. You can't find quality anymore." Her friends tittered. One of them, a blonde with a face pulled too tight for her age, leaned forward. "I know what you mean. Last week I had to send back my order 3 times before they got it right. Where do they even find these people?" Autumn's fingers tightened around the tray. She kept her expression neutral, professional. This wasn't the first time she'd been discussed like she wasn't standing right there. Wouldn't be the last. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, voice steady. Valentina finally looked directly at her. Really looked. Her gaze travelled from Autumn's face down to her stomach and back up again. Slow and deliberate. The disgust wasn't hidden, wasn't even masked. "Tell me something," Valentina said, stirring sugar into her coffee with a delicate silver spoon. "Do they not have standards anymore? Or are they just that desperate?" The third woman, a redhead dripping in diamonds, actually gasped with delight at the cruelty. "Valentina, you're terrible." "I'm honest," Valentina corrected. She looked up at Autumn, that smile forming. Sharp, practiced, the smile of someone who knew exactly how much damage she could inflict. No offense, of course. "I'm sure you need the work." Autumn's jaw tightened. "Will there be anything else?" "Actually, yes." Valentina tilted her head. "I'm curious. Is there a father? Or is that too personal a question for someone serving my coffee?" The blonde laughed behind her hand. The redhead looked away, suddenly fascinated by the street outside. Before we go further into what happened next, take a moment to like this video and tell me where you're watching from. These stories seem to reach people everywhere, and I'm curious how far this one travels. Drop your country in the comments. Autumn felt heat rising up her neck, not embarrassment. Anger, pure and clean and dangerous, but she'd learned to swallow that too. Anger didn't pay bills. Anger got you fired. "I'll check on your food order," she said quietly, and turned to leave. "Wait," Valentina's voice stopped her. "I didn't dismiss you yet." Autumn turned back slowly. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking, to get away from this woman and her vicious games. But she needed this job, needed every dollar that came with it. "Yes, Mum?" Valentina leaned back in her chair, studying her like a scientist examining something under a microscope. "How much do you make in tips on average?" "I'm not sure, that's humour me." Autumn's hands were shaking now. She pressed them against her sides. "It varies." "But surely you must track it. Someone in your position would need to budget carefully." Valentina pulled out her wallet, a designer piece of leather that probably cost more than Autumn's entire wardrobe. She extracted a $20 bill, held it up between 2 perfectly manicured fingers. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a choice. You can take this 20 right now, or you can wait and see what I leave you on the table. What do you think you should do?" The cafe had gone quiet around them. Other tables were watching now. Other servers. Gina stood near the kitchen, frozen, her face pale. This was a trap. Autumn knew it was a trap. If she took the 20, Valentina would have her story about the desperate pregnant waitress. If she refused, Valentina would find some other way to humiliate her. "I'll wait for whatever you decide to leave," Autumn said. Valentina's smile widened. Pride, how quaint. She tucked the 20 back into her wallet with exaggerated slowness. You know what I find fascinating? People who get themselves into situations and then expect the rest of us to feel sorry for them. You made choices. Now you're living with them. But somehow that becomes everyone else's problem. Valentina, the redhead murmured, clearly uncomfortable now. Maybe we should. Should what? Dinged! Pretend we don't see what's right in front of us? Valentina's eyes never left Autumn's face. I'm simply making an observation. Some people plan their lives, others just let things happen to them. Autumn felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking. Shifting. She'd spent 6 months invisible. 6 months accepting whatever scraps people threw her way. 6 months swallowing her dignity because survival mattered more. But there was a limit. Even for her. Is there anything else you need? She asked. And this time her voice carried an edge she didn't bother to hide. Valentina heard it. Her expression changed, pleasure flickering across her features. She'd found the wound.
Now she press. Actually, yes.
She picked up her coffee cup, examined it like she'd just noticed a flaw. This is cold. I'd like a fresh one. And this time, try not to mess it up. Autumn knew the coffee was hot. She'd poured it less than 3 minutes ago, but arguing would make it worse. Everything made it worse with people like Valentina. She reached for the cup. Valentina's smile was a blade wrapped in lipstick. You should be more careful, she said, her voice honey and poison. Autumn walked back to the coffee bar on legs that threatened to give out. Her hands trembled as she poured fresh coffee into a clean cup. The liquid steamed, nearly boiling, standard temperature for Bellano's espresso machine, hot enough to burn. She steadied herself, took a breath. This was just another difficult custom. She'd dealt with worse. She'd survived worse. She could survive Valentina Greco. The walk back to the table felt longer than it should have. Other customers had returned to their conversations, but she felt their peripheral attention. They were waiting, sensing something about to happen the way animals sense storms. Valentina was laughing at something the blonde had said when Autumn approached. She set the cup down gently, carefully, giving Valentina no reason to complain. Your fresh coffee, ma'am. Valentina glanced at it, picked up the cup, held it between both hands like she was testing the temperature. Her eyes met Autumn's over the rim. You know, Valentina said conversationally, I really do wonder about people who make such obviously poor decisions. It's fascinating, really, the complete lack of foresight. Autumn said nothing. There was nothing safe to say. I mean, look at you. Valentina's voice carried across the table, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. 6 months pregnant, working a job that clearly exhausts you, no ring on your finger. Did you really think this would end well? Did you plan any of this? Valentina, the redhead said quietly. That's enough.
Is it? Valentina's grip on the cup tightened. I don't think so.
I think someone needs to hear the truth. Actions have consequences.
Poor choices have consequences. Autumn's protective instinct flared. Her hand moved unconsciously to her belly. I should get back to work. Of course you should. That's all people like you do, isn't it? Serve. Clean up after your betters. Know your place. Valentina stood abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor. But first, let me give you some advice. She stepped closer, too close. Autumn could smell her perfume. Something expensive and cloying. Learn to be more careful, Valentina said. Because the world doesn't owe you anything. Not sympathy. Not help. Nothing. What happened next occurred in the space between heartbeats. Valentina's hand moved. The cup tilted, and suddenly hot coffee was flying through the air, arcing toward Autumn in a wave of scalding liquid. It hit her left arm and shoulder. The pain was immediate and absolute. Fire spreading across her skin. She gasped, a sound that came from somewhere primal, and her body reacted before her mind could process. Her arms came up, crossed over her belly, protecting the baby even as the coffee soaked through her uniform. The cup clattered to the floor. Coffee pooled across the tiles. Autumn cried out. Not a scream. Something worse. A wounded sound that cut through the cafe's ambient noise and turned every head in the room. The pain was extraordinary, worse than anything she'd prepared for. The coffee had been nearly boiling and now it clung to her skin, burning deeper with each second. Her arm was on fire, her shoulder, the edge of her neck where droplets had splashed. She stumbled backward. Her hip caught the edge of a chair. And then she was falling, her knees hitting the floor hard, both arms still wrapped around her stomach because the baby mattered more than pride, more than dignity, more than anything. Oh my God, someone said. Valentina was laughing, actually laughing, a bright, delighted sound that belonged at parties. Not here, not now, not while Autumn knelt on the floor with coffee dripping down her arm and tears streaming down her face. Did you see her face? Valentina said to her friends. The way she just... The blonde had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. The redhead had pushed back from the table, standing now, looking anywhere but at Autumn, but Valentina kept laughing. Autumn tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. The pain was too much. Everything was too much. She could feel eyes on her from every direction. The entire cafe had gone silent, witnesses to her humiliation, watching her kneel in spilled coffee and her own tears. Someone should really clean that up, Valentina said, gesturing at the mess, before someone slips. Her friends didn't laugh this time, didn't join her. The blonde had turned away completely. The redhead was staring at Valentina like she'd never seen her before. Gina appeared from somewhere, moving toward Autumn with a towel. Other servers hovered at the edges, uncertain, afraid. Nobody wanted to get involved. Nobody wanted to risk their own position by defending someone disposable. Autumn looked down at her arm. The skin was already red and angry, blistering in places. The pain throbbed in time with her heartbeat. She could smell burned coffee and something else, burned skin. Her baby kicked, a small flutter against her ribs, alive, safe, protected. She'd protected her baby. That was all that mattered. But God, it hurt. The physical pain was bad enough, but the humiliation was worse. Being on her knees in front of all these people, being laughed at, being treated like she was worth less than the coffee now soaking into the floor. Valentina was still talking, still performing for an audience that no longer existed. Honestly, if you can't handle a simple coffee service, maybe this job is too much for you. Have you considered something less demanding? I hear fast food is always hiring. Autumn's vision blurred. From tears or pain or rage she couldn't tell, maybe all three. She tried again to stand, made it halfway before her legs betrayed her and she sank back down. The burned skin on her arm screamed with the movement. Fresh tears fell. This was rock bottom. This was as low as life could push her. The cafe door opened. A blast of cold air swept in from the street, and Autumn felt it. That same atmospheric shift from before, but stronger now, colder. The temperature plummeting like someone had opened a freezer door. Conversations that had begun to restart died again. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Even Valentina's laughter cut off mid-note. Autumn looked up through her tears. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, dark suit. Eyes that swept across the cafe in one comprehensive glance and took in everything. The spilled coffee. Autumn on the floor. Valentina standing over her. Everything. His expression didn't change. But something in the air did, something fundamental. Then the air went cold, and a voice, low, controlled, lethal, cut through the silence. Leave. For a moment nobody moved. The word hung in the air like a command from something beyond human authority. Not a request, not a suggestion. Down the mind, an absolute. Valentina's face transformed. The cruel amusement vanished, replaced by recognition and something that looked almost like fear. Enzo. I didn't know you were coming early. The man, Enzo Salvatore, Autumn's mind supplied from somewhere distant, didn't respond to her. His attention had already moved past Valentina, past her friends frozen at their table, and landed on Autumn still kneeling in spilled coffee. He crossed the cafe floor in 5 measured steps. His shoes were expensive. Italian leather that probably cost more than Autumn made in 2 months. They made no sound against the tiles. People shifted in their seats to watch him. Not because he demanded attention, but because his presence commanded it anyway. He moved with the certainty of someone who'd never had to question his right to occupy any space he chose. Autumn tried to stand again. Her body still wouldn't cooperate. The pain in her arm had graduated from fire to something worse, a deep burning that went all the way down to bone. She could feel her skin blistering under her uniform. Enzo stopped 3 feet away. His eyes were dark, not brown, not black, something in between. Winter eyes. The kind that saw everything and revealed nothing. Don't move, he said quietly, not to Valentina, to Autumn. Then he crouched beside her, balanced on the balls of his feet, and something in the cafe's atmosphere shifted again. This man in his $1,000 suit, kneeling in spilled coffee next to a pregnant waitress most people wouldn't look at twice. Let me see your arm, he said. It wasn't a request, but his voice held no cruelty, just steady authority. The tone of someone used to being obeyed without question. Autumn uncrossed her arms from her belly, moving slowly. Every nerve in her burned skin screamed protest. She extended her left arm toward him, and even in her pain she noticed her hand was shaking. Enzo examined the burns without touching her. His expression remained neutral, but something in his jaw tightened. The damage was visible even from a distance. Angry red welts covered her forearm and shoulder. Some places had already started to blister. Coffee still dripped from her sleeve. "How many months?" he asked.
Autumn's voice came out rough.
6. He nodded once. His gaze moved to her stomach, then back to her face. For just a second, something flickered in those winter eyes. Recognition? No. Something deeper. Something that looked like realization. "Enzo, darling." Valentina's voice had changed. Gone was the cruel playfulness. Now she sounded uncertain. "She was clumsy. I was just trying to." Quiet. One word, spoken without volume or emphasis. But Valentina's mouth snapped shut like he'd physically closed it. Enzo stood slowly, his full attention still on Autumn. "Can you stand?" She nodded. Tried. Failed. Her legs had turned to water beneath her. He offered his hand. Autumn stared at it for a long moment. Clean. Manicured. The hand of someone who'd never worked a service job in his life, but steady, certain. She took it. His grip was firm as he helped her to her feet. The world tilted slightly when she stood, pain and shock making her dizzy, but his hand on her elbow kept her upright. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't acknowledge it. Instead, he turned to face Valentina, and the temperature in the cafe seemed to drop another 10 degrees. "Explain," he said. Valentina's face had gone pale beneath her expensive makeup. "It was an accident. The coffee just— Don't lie to me." His voice remained level, calm, but there was something underneath it now, something that made everyone in the cafe hold their breath. Valentina's hands twisted together. She was being difficult. "I asked for fresh coffee and she took forever, and when she finally brought it back, I didn't mean to actually— You threw hot coffee at a pregnant woman. It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" Valentina looked to her friends for support. The blonde had her head down, studying her hands. The redhead had moved 3 steps away from the table, distancing herself. "Enzo, please. You're embarrassing me in front of everyone." "Am I?" He tilted his head slightly. "You threw coffee at my waitress. In my establishment. And you're concerned about embarrassment, your establishment." Autumn's voice was barely audible. The pieces were falling into place. Bellano Cafe, Enzo Salvatore. She'd heard the ownership mentioned once or twice by other servers, but never connected it to anything real. He glanced at her. "I own this building, and 3 others on this block." Of course he did. Men like him always owned things. Buildings, businesses, people's lives. His attention returned to Valentina. "You will apologize. I already said it was an accident." "You will apologize," he repeated, "or you will leave. Your choice." Valentina's face flushed. "You can't be serious. I'm your fiancé." The word landed like a stone in still water. Fiancé. This cruel woman with her designer clothes and casual violence was engaged to the man who owned half the block. The man currently helping Autumn stay upright while her arm burned and her baby kicked and her entire world tried to right itself. "Yes," Enzo said quietly. "You are, which makes this worse." He shifted his position slightly, angling himself so he stood between Autumn and Valentina, protecting. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable. Then he looked down at Autumn again. Really looked at her. His eyes moved across her face, lingering on details. The shape of her nose, the colour of her eyes, the way her hair fell across her forehead despite being pulled back. Something changed in his expression, a crack in that winter mask. "When," he said slowly, "were you going to tell me?" Autumn's heart stopped. "Tell you what?" His hand moved to her chin, tilting her face up toward the light, studying her. Then his gaze dropped to her stomach, to the 6-month swell that she'd tried to hide under loose uniforms and strategic positioning. "You spilled coffee," he said, his voice carrying across the entire cafe now, "on someone carrying my child. If you're already invested in where this is going, hit that like button. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next." The silence that followed was absolute. No one breathed. No one moved. Even the espresso machine seemed to quiet, as if the cafe itself was holding its breath. Valentina's face went from pale to white. "What?" Enzo didn't repeat himself, didn't explain. He just kept his eyes on Autumn, waiting for her to confirm or deny something they both already knew. Autumn's throat closed. 7 months ago, a charity gala. One night that was supposed to mean nothing and had ended up meaning everything. She'd looked for him afterward, spent weeks trying to find him. But men like Enzo Salvatore didn't want to be found unless they chose to be. 7 months, she whispered. It's been 7 months. His jaw tightened. I know. You left. I know that too. Valentina made a sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Something between disbelief and rage. You're joking. This is a joke. Enzo, tell me this is a joke. He finally looked at her. Go home, Valentina. This waitress is trying to trap you and you're telling me to go home. She's not trying anything. His voice remained calm, deadly calm. I remember her. I remember that night. And looking at her now, doing the math, there's no question. Valentina's scream tore through the cafe, but Enzo didn't flinch. He simply stood, dusted off his sleeve and said one word, security. 2 men in dark suits appeared in the doorway within 30 seconds. They moved with military precision, positioning themselves on either side of the entrance. Not blocking it, just present. A statement. Enzo pulled his phone from his inside jacket pocket. The movement was casual, unhurried. He held it in one hand while his other remained on Autumn's elbow, steadying her. First call, he said to no one in particular. Then he tapped the screen and held the phone to his ear. Someone answered on the first ring. Enzo's voice remained conversational. Thomas. Yes. Cancel the engagement announcement scheduled for next week? All of it. The venue, the vendors, the guest list. Send the deposits wherever you need to send them. A pause while the person on the other end spoke. No, Enzo said. Not postponed. Cancelled. Permanently. He ended the call, looked at Valentina. Her face had gone from white to red, rage and humiliation warring across her features. You can't do this, she said. Second call. He dialed again. Valentina lunged forward. Enzo, stop, please. We can talk about this. Just stop. One of the bodyguards moved slightly, not touching her but creating a wall between her and Enzo. She froze. The call connected. Robert, I need you to freeze all accounts connected to Valentina Greco. Yes, all of them. Credit cards, bank access, everything under my name. Effective immediately. That's my money, Valentina shrieked. Enzo's eyes flicked to her. No, it's my money. You had access to it. Past tense. He continued, speaking into the phone. Also, remove her name from the property on 5th Avenue. Yes, the penthouse. He paused. I don't care if she has belongings there. She can arrange a time to collect them with security present. Valentina's legs gave out. She caught herself on the back of a chair, gripping it so hard her knuckles went white. You're insane. You're throwing away everything we built because of some waitress and her lies? Third call. Enzo tapped his screen again. Enzo, please. Valentina's voice cracked. The fury was draining out of her, replaced by something rawer. Panic. I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. It was stupid and cruel, and I shouldn't have done it. But we can fix this. We can... Marcus, Enzo said into the phone, I need you to make some calls. Every event Valentina Greco was scheduled to attend in my name. Remove her. The museum gala, the foundation dinner, all of it. Around the cafe, customers had their phones out now, not calling, recording, capturing this public execution in real time. Tomorrow this would be everywhere. The story of Valentina Greco's fall.
Enzo continued.
Also, reach out to the Greco family. Let them know the merger discussions are terminated. They'll understand why. Valentina made a sound like something breaking.
My family.
You're going after my family. No. Enzo pocketed his phone. I'm simply withdrawing my protection. What happens to them after that is their concern, not mine. The weight of those words settled over the cafe like snow. Everyone who'd been watching, who'd been recording, suddenly understood something fundamental about the man standing in their midst. This wasn't rage. Rage was hot and impulsive. This was calculation. This was a man who could destroy lives with 3 phone calls and feel nothing while doing it. Valentina straightened. The panic was still there, visible in the tremor of her hands, but she was grasping for any weapon she could find. You think anyone will believe you, that she's actually pregnant with your child? She probably doesn't even know who the father is. Enzo's expression didn't change. DNA test will confirm it. But I don't need a test. I know. How could you possibly know? Because I remember. His voice dropped lower, harder. I remember exactly what happened 7 months ago. I remember her face, her voice, the way she laughed when I said something that surprised her. I remember every detail of that night, Valentina. And I remember leaving like a coward the next morning because mixing my world with someone innocent seemed dangerous. He turned his head slightly, looking at Autumn. I remember all of it. Autumn's breath caught. She'd thought he'd forgotten her. Assumed she'd been one night among hundreds for a man like him, but the way he was looking at her now suggested something different. Valentina saw it too, that connection, that history, and whatever weapon she'd been reaching for crumbled in her hands. We were supposed to get married. We were supposed to merge business interests, Enzo corrected. Marriage was just the paperwork. You knew that. I knew that. Everyone knew that. I loved you. For the first time since entering the cafe, Enzo's expression shifted, not to sympathy, to something colder. No, you didn't. You loved what I could give you. The access, the power, the status of being Enzo Salvatore's wife. He gestured toward Autumn. What you did to her was because she represented everything you despise. Someone struggling. Someone vulnerable, someone you saw as beneath you. She is beneath me. No, his voice cut like glass. She's above you, because she would never throw hot coffee at a pregnant woman just to feel powerful for 30 seconds. The bodyguards moved forward without being told. They flanked Valentina on both sides, each taking an arm gently but firmly. Don't touch me, she twisted against their grip, but they were professionals. They didn't hurt her, didn't need to. They just began walking her toward the door, her feet stumbling over the floor she'd walked across so confidently 20 minutes ago. Enzo! Her voice rose to a scream. You'll regret this. My family won't forget. You can't just throw me away like garbage. But they were already at the door, already pushing through into the Manhattan morning. Her voice faded to nothing as the door swung shut behind them. The cafe remained frozen. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They'd just witnessed something that would become legend in certain circles. The public dismantling of Valentina Greco. The end of an engagement that was supposed to unite two powerful families. And all of it because she'd thrown coffee at the wrong pregnant waitress. Enzo turned to the room at large. This cafe is closed for the next hour. Everyone out. Your meals are complimentary. People moved quickly, gathering coats and bags, leaving half-finished coffees and pastries on tables. Nobody argued. Nobody asked questions. Within 2 minutes, the cafe had emptied except for Gina, 2 other servers, Autumn and Enzo. Staff too, Enzo said quietly. Gina hesitated. Sir, she needs medical attention. I'm aware. He pulled his phone out again. You can leave. I'll make sure she's taken care of. Gina looked at Autumn, silently asking permission. Autumn managed a small nod. She didn't know what was happening anymore. The pain in her arm had become background noise to the surreal chaos of the last 10 minutes. The staff left. Silence filled Bellano Cafe like water filling a glass. Enzo made one more call. Dr. Chen, I need you at Bellano Cafe on 5th. Immediately. Burns. 2nd degree at minimum. 6 months pregnant. He listened. I don't care what you were doing. Cancel it. He ended the call and finally let his controlled mask slip. Exhaustion showed through. Or maybe guilt. His shoulders sagged slightly as he looked at Autumn. Sit, he said, gesturing to the nearest chair. Autumn lowered herself into it, cradling her burned arm against her chest. The adrenaline was fading. The pain was getting worse. 5 minutes passed in silence. Then the door opened and a man entered carrying a medical bag. Late 50s, grey hair, expensive watch. He took one look at the situation and didn't ask any questions. Let me see, he said to Autumn. As the doctor arrived, Enzo knelt beside Autumn again. When were you going to tell me? He asked quietly. Autumn didn't answer immediately. The doctor was already examining her arm, his touch clinical and efficient. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain through her nerves, but she bit down on the inside of her cheek and stayed quiet. When were you going to tell me? Enzo asked again. She met his eyes. Never. The word landed between them like a confession. Honest, final. Dr. Chen glanced up briefly, then returned to his work. He'd clearly learned long ago not to involve himself in his employer's personal affairs. Why? Enzo's voice remained low, meant only for her, because I tried. Autumn's free hand rested on her stomach. I tried for 6 weeks to find you. Do you have any idea how impossible that is? Enzo Salvatore doesn't exist in phone books, doesn't have a public address. I went back to the hotel where the gala was held. They wouldn't tell me anything. I asked the catering company if they had any information about guests. Nothing. You vanished like you were never real. The doctor applied something cool to her burns. Autumn hissed through her teeth. I'm sorry, Dr. Chen murmured. She shook her head. Not his fault. None of this was his fault. Enzo's jaw tightened. I should have left information, a way to contact me, but you didn't. There was no accusation in her voice, just fact. So after 6 weeks, I stopped looking. I accepted that I was going to do this alone. You shouldn't have had to.
Maybe not, but that's how it was.
The memory came back without invitation 7 months ago. The Whitfield Hotel ballroom, crystal chandeliers, and people wearing clothes that cost more than Autumn's yearly rent. She'd been hired as extra catering staff for a charity gala benefiting some foundation she couldn't remember now. She'd been clearing glasses from a balcony overlooking the East River when he'd appeared beside her, just suddenly there, like he'd materialized from the night itself. Hiding? He'd asked. She turned, ready with her professional smile and apology for taking a break. But the smile had faltered when she saw him. Tall, dark suit that fit perfectly, eyes that seemed to see through all her careful defenses. Breathing, she'd answered honestly. It's intense in there. He'd smiled. A real smile. Not the practice kind she'd seen all night on the faces of wealthy donors. It is. These events are theatre. Everyone playing their assigned role. What's your role? Benefactor with deep pockets and shallow morals. He'd said it without humour, just stating fact. And yours? Invisible support staff who keeps the champagne flowing. They'd talked for 20 minutes. Then an hour. By the time someone came looking for her, they'd moved to a quieter corner, and the conversation had shifted to real things. Her dreams of opening her own cafe someday. His admission that he'd inherited a life he never chose. The way they both felt trapped by circumstances they couldn't control. When the gala ended, he'd asked if she wanted to get real food. Not the tiny portions being served inside. Actual food. They'd found a 24-hour diner in Queens, sat in a booth with cracked vinyl and talked until sunrise, and somewhere in those hours, something had shifted. The careful distance they'd both maintained had dissolved. She'd gone back to his hotel room, not because he'd pressured, not because she felt obligated, but because for the first time in years she'd felt seen, heard, like she mattered beyond her function. They'd made love slowly, carefully. He'd touched her, like she was something precious. Afterward, they'd fallen asleep tangled together, and she'd thought maybe this could be the start of something real. She'd woken alone. No note, no number. Just an empty bed and the slowly sinking realization that she'd let herself believe in fairy tales. 3 weeks later, she'd missed her period. I looked for you, Enzo said, pulling her back to the present. After that night, I went back to the hotel, asked about the catering staff. They said most were contract workers hired just for the event. No records of names. Autumn's throat tightened. You looked? For 2 months. Every lead went nowhere. He ran a hand through his hair, the first truly uncontrolled gesture she'd seen from him. I told myself it was better that way, that my world would destroy someone like you. But I thought about you. Every day. Doctor, Chen finished wrapping her arm in clean bandages. 2nd-degree burns. They'll heal, but you need to keep them clean and covered. I'm prescribing something for the pain that's safe during pregnancy. Change the dressing twice daily. He pulled out a prescription pad, scribbled quickly, handed it to Enzo, not Autumn. Thank you, Enzo said. Send the bill to my office. Dr. Chen nodded, packed his supplies, and left without another word. The cafe door clicked shut behind him. Autumn and Enzo sat in silence. The morning sun had fully risen now, streaming through the windows and illuminating the coffee stains still on the floor. Evidence of violence, of transformation. Valentina, Autumn said finally. Your fiancé. Former fiancé? You were engaged? Yes. Enzo shifted, moving from kneeling to sitting in the chair beside her, close enough to touch but maintaining distance. It was arranged. 2 families, 1 merger. She came from old New York money. I came from newer money with older connections. The marriage would have been beneficial for both sides. Did you love her? No. No hesitation, no qualification. I respected the arrangement. That was all it ever was. Autumn looked down at her bandaged arm. The pain had dulled to a constant throb, manageable now with whatever the doctor had applied. And now? Now there is no arrangement, no engagement, no merger. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What she did today was unforgivable. But even if she hadn't done that, even if I'd walked in here and just seen you behind the counter, it would have ended. Because 7 months ago changed everything, whether I admitted it or not. You don't know me. I know enough. His eyes found hers. I know you were kind when you didn't have to be. I know you listened when I talked about things I never discuss. I know you made me feel human for the first time in years. And I know I left like a coward. What world is that exactly? He studied her for a long moment, calculating. The kind where people like Valentina exist unchecked until they're not useful anymore. The kind where power matters more than decency, where violence is currency and loyalty is bought. He paused. My family has been part of New York's infrastructure for 3 generations. Legitimate businesses with illegitimate foundations. I inherited it all when my father died. So you're... Yes, he didn't make her say it. I'm exactly what you think I am. Autumn's hand moved to her stomach again, their child growing inside her. Half her, half him. half waitress trying to survive, half whatever darkness he carried. "Why did you leave that morning?" she asked. "Because I knew if I stayed, I'd want more. I'd want you in my life, and everyone in my life becomes a target eventually." His voice roughened. "I was trying to protect you by staying away. That's not how protection works. I know that now." The cafe felt smaller suddenly, more intimate. Just the two of them and 7 months of missed connection hanging in the air between them. "Valentina was right about one thing," Autumn said quietly. "I did make poor choices. Getting pregnant by someone I barely knew, keeping a baby I can barely afford, working myself to exhaustion because pride mattered more than asking for help I didn't have access to anyway. Those weren't poor choices." Enzo's hand moved toward hers, stopped halfway, hovering, asking permission. "You chose to keep fighting, to keep our child, to maintain your dignity even when people like her tried to strip it away. Those are the choices of someone strong, not foolish." Autumn looked at his hand, still hovering, waiting. This man who'd just destroyed his fiancée's life with 3 phone calls, who commanded authority like breathing, who clearly existed in a world of violence and power she couldn't begin to understand. But he was waiting for permission to touch her. She closed the distance, took his hand, let him feel the tremor that hadn't stopped since the coffee burned her skin. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of me? Of all of this? Of what it means? Of what comes next?" She looked at their joined hands, his clean and manicured, hers work-worn and damaged. "You live in a different universe than I do. And now there's a baby connecting us. Our baby. But I don't know how any of this works." "Neither do I," he said. "But I know I'm not walking away again. I know I'm going to take care of you, both of you, however you'll let me. I don't want to be kept. I'm not offering to keep you. I'm offering to be present, to be a father, to make up for 7 months of absence I can't take back." His grip on her hand tightened slightly. "But I need you to understand something. My world is dangerous. Being connected to me puts you at risk. After today, after what just happened, people will know you exist. They'll know about our child. That changes things." Autumn looked at this powerful man kneeling before her and asked the only question that mattered. "What happens now?" "Now," Enzo said, standing and helping her to her feet. "We make sure you and the baby are safe. Dr. Chen said the burns will heal, but I want a full examination. Prenatal check, blood work, everything." Autumn steadied herself against the table. "I have a clinic. They've been following my pregnancy. They're not equipped for what you need right now. I'm taking you to Mount Sinai's private wing. They have the best maternal fetal specialists in the city. I can't afford." "You're not paying." He pulled out his phone, already dialing. "This is my responsibility." That word again. Responsibility. It landed heavy and cold. Autumn had spent 6 months accepting that she was alone in this, that her baby would be her burden and her joy, but hers alone to carry. Now this man was rewriting the entire narrative in real time. "I need to get my things from my apartment," she said. "Change clothes, process what just happened." Enzo spoke into his phone. "Have a car ready at Bellano Cafe. We're going to Mount Sinai's private entrance." He paused, listening. "Yes, full security detail, permanent assignment starting now." He ended the call and looked at her. "We'll stop at your apartment. You can pack whatever you need. But you're not staying there tonight." "Excuse me? After today, after Valentina and what I did to her in front of witnesses with phones, you're not safe in an unsecured location. The Greco family will want revenge. They won't come after me directly, but you're vulnerable." Autumn's head was spinning. Burns, pregnancy, public confrontation. And now threats from a family she'd never heard of until an hour ago. "You're saying I'm in danger because your ex-fiancé threw coffee at me? I'm saying you're in danger because you're connected to me now. That connection was always there, but it was hidden. Now it's public. That changes everything." A black car pulled up outside the cafe. 2 men got out, different from the ones who'd escorted Valentina away, but cut from the same cloth. Alert. Professional. Armed probably, though Autumn couldn't see weapons. "Those are my people," Enzo said. "They'll stay with you. Wherever you go, they go. Non-negotiable. You're assigning me bodyguards." "Yes. Like I'm some kind of..." She stopped. What was she? Not his girlfriend, not his wife, just the mother of his unborn child, a complication in his complicated world. "Like you're someone important to me," Enzo finished. "Someone carrying my child. Someone I should have protected 7 months ago and didn't." One of the bodyguards opened the cafe door, stood waiting, patient but expectant. Autumn looked at Enzo, This man who'd walked into her worst moment and turned it into something else entirely. Protection felt like control. Safety felt like a cage. But the alternative was going back to her studio apartment with its broken lock and thin walls, pretending today hadn't happened. How long, she asked. How long what? How long do I need security? A week? A month? His expression told her the answer before he spoke. Indefinitely. As long as you're connected to me, you need protection. That's not negotiable, but everything else is. They got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and money. Autumn had never been in a vehicle this expensive. The seats were heated. Classical music played softly through speakers she couldn't see. Enzo gave the driver her address. The man nodded once and pulled into Manhattan traffic. Tell me about your world, Autumn said. If I'm going to be part of it, I need to understand. Enzo was quiet for a long moment, watching the city pass by the tinted windows. My grandfather came to New York in 1952, started with a restaurant in Little Italy. Legitimate business on the surface, money laundering underneath. By the time my father took over, we'd expanded into construction, waste management, shipping, all legitimate, mostly. Mostly. We provide services people need. Sometimes those services exist in grey areas, sometimes they're black as midnight. But we maintain order, we protect our territory, we take care of our people. He turned to look at her. And we're ruthless to anyone who threatens what's ours. Autumn absorbed this. Organised crime. The Mafia, though he hadn't used that word. She'd known, abstractly, when he'd mentioned his world, but hearing it spoken plainly was different. And Valentina's family? Old money trying to stay relevant? They needed my connections. I needed their legitimacy. Marriage would have sealed it. But that's done now, because of me. Because of what she did to you. There's a difference. The car stopped outside her building. A 5-story walk-up in a neighbourhood that was gentrifying but not there yet. Her apartment was on the 4th floor, no elevator. I can pack alone, she said. You can. But security comes with you. One of the bodyguards opened her door, stood waiting. She got out slowly, her burned arm throbbing with the movement. The climb to her apartment took twice as long as usual. The bodyguard followed 3 steps behind, close enough to help if she fell but far enough to give the illusion of space. Enzo waited in the car. Her apartment looked smaller than she remembered. 1 room serving as bedroom, living room and kitchen. A bathroom with a shower that leaked, windows overlooking a brick wall. This was her life. This was what she'd been protecting by working herself into exhaustion. She packed quickly. Clothes, toiletries, the prenatal vitamin she bought at the discount pharmacy, her laptop, a few books. Everything fit in 1 duffel bag. The bodyguard carried it down without being asked. Back in the car, Enzo studied her face. That's where you've been living. Yes, alone. 6 months pregnant, working doubles at the cafe. Yes. If you think he's in the wrong here, tell me why in the comments. I need to hear your honest take on this because what comes next depends on understanding both sides. I'm not judging, he said quietly. I'm calculating, trying to understand what you've been through while I was making business deals and planning a wedding I didn't want. I survived. That's what matters. Survival isn't living. They drove to Mount Sinai, a private entrance. An elevator that required a keycard, a floor that felt more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. The doctor who examined her was thorough and kind. She ran tests, checked the baby's heartbeat, redressed the burns with better supplies than Dr. Chen had available at the cafe. Everything looks good, the doctor said finally. Baby is healthy. Burns will heal clean if you keep them covered, but you need rest. Real rest. Your blood pressure is elevated and you're showing signs of exhaustion. Enzo stood in the corner of the examination room watching, listening. His expression revealed nothing, but Autumn had learned to read the tension in his shoulders. When the doctor left, he moved closer. You heard her. You need rest. I have work tomorrow. No, you don't. Autumn sat up on the examination table. I can't just stop working. I have bills. Rent. I'll cover it. That's not a choice. It's a fact. He pulled out his phone. I can have someone collect your things from the cafe, give notice to your landlord, have your apartment packed and moved to somewhere secure, all of it handled by tomorrow. You're trying to control my life. I'm trying to give you options. He pocketed his phone, sat in the chair beside the examination table. Here's the truth. I have money, resources, power. You have independence and strength, but no safety net. Our child deserves better than both of us struggling in different ways. So what are you proposing? I have a property in Brooklyn. Brownstone, 3 stories, fully secure. I bought it 2 years ago as an investment. It's been empty since. You can live there, rent-free. security included. Or I can set you up in a building I own in Manhattan, closer to better hospitals. Your choice. Autumn's hands clenched in her lap. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Peace of mind that you're safe. Access to my child. The ability to be present in a way I should have been from the beginning. What if I say no? Then I respect that. But the security detail stays, and I'm still covering your medical expenses, still setting up a trust for the baby, still being a father. He leaned forward. You can refuse the housing. You can refuse my money for yourself. But you can't refuse me being part of my child's life. That's the one thing I won't negotiate. Autumn placed her hand on her belly and said, I have conditions. Enzo listened to Autumn's conditions without interruption. She wanted independence, her own bank account that he couldn't access, the right to work if she chose when she was ready, no decisions about the baby made without consulting her, no public appearances together until she was comfortable, no pressure for anything romantic. He agreed to all of it. By the time they left Mount Sinai, the news had already started spreading. Videos from the cafe had gone viral. Shaky phone footage of Valentina being escorted out screaming. Audio of Enzo cancelling their engagement with cold precision. Close-ups of Autumn on the floor, burned and pregnant. The story wrote itself. Entitled Socialite Attacks Pregnant Woman. Mafia boss Fiancée chooses the victim over his bride-to-be. Public execution of a relationship that was supposed to unite two powerful families. Within 6 hours, every gossip site in New York had picked it up. By evening, national news outlets were running segments. The narrative was already set. Valentina Greco, cruel and heartless. Enzo Salvatore, unexpectedly noble. Autumn Blake, the innocent caught in the crossfire. Autumn watched it unfold from the Brooklyn brownstone Enzo had offered her. 3 stories of exposed brick and hardwood floors. Furniture that cost more than she'd earned in a year. Security cameras on every entrance. 2 bodyguards stationed outside 24/7. She'd accepted it. Not because she wanted to, but because Enzo was right. She wasn't safe anymore. The baby wasn't safe. Her old life had ended the moment that coffee flew through the air. Her phone had died from the volume of calls and messages. Friends she hadn't spoken to in months. Former co-workers. Reporters offering money for interviews. She'd turned it off completely and used the landline Enzo had installed instead. Meanwhile, Valentina's world was collapsing in real time. The Greco family tried damage control immediately. Public statements about misunderstandings and exaggerated reports. Their lawyers reached out to Enzo's lawyers, suggesting quiet settlements and non-disclosure agreements. Enzo refused everything. He'd given one instruction to his network, and that instruction had spread like wildfire through New York's power circles. Valentina Greco was blacklisted, not harmed, not threatened, just removed from access. Every charity board she sat on received gentle suggestions that her presence was no longer beneficial. Every exclusive club found reasons to revoke her membership. Every invitation to galas and benefits mysteriously failed to arrive. Even her favourite restaurant suddenly had no available tables when she called. She wasn't being destroyed, she was being erased. The Greco family's business deals that had depended on their alliance with Enzo fell through one by one. Permits that should have been approved got delayed. Contracts that were nearly signed suddenly needed more review. Nothing illegal, nothing overt, just the slow, methodical withdrawal of protection they'd enjoyed while connected to the Salvatore name. By the end of the first week, Valentina's father had stopped returning Enzo's lawyer's calls. He'd made his calculation. One daughter's humiliation versus the entire family's financial stability. He'd chosen survival. Valentina called Enzo on day 8. He was at the brownstone with Autumn, helping her set up the nursery she'd finally agreed to let him furnish. His phone rang. He looked at the screen, showed it to Autumn. "Do you want me to answer?" he asked. Autumn nodded. She was curious despite herself. Enzo put it on speaker. "Valentina, I've lost everything." Her voice was raw, broken. "My family won't talk to me. My friends have disappeared. I can't go anywhere without people whispering. My credit cards are all maxed out because you froze my accounts and I had to pay for things myself. I'm living in my cousin's guest room because I can't afford my own place anymore." "Yes," Enzo said simply. "That's all you have to say? Yes? You threw hot coffee at a pregnant woman because she reminded you that other people exist below your tax bracket. This is the consequence." "I apologized. I said I was sorry." "You apologized after I started making phone calls. Not when you were laughing while she cried on the floor." Silence on the line. Then a sound that might have been a sob. "I'm begging you. Please, cool off whatever you're doing. Let me have my life back. I'll stay away from you, from her, from everyone." Enzo looked at Autumn. She met his eyes. This was the woman who'd burned her, who'd humiliated her, who'd laughed at her pain. But Autumn saw her own reflection in Valentina's desperation. Different circumstances, different choices, but the same fundamental terror of losing everything. She shook her head slightly. Not forgiveness, just exhaustion with the whole cycle. You're not blacklisted anymore, Enzo said. As of now. I'm calling it off. Valentina's breath caught. Really? But you're not getting your old life back either. You humiliated someone vulnerable. Now you get to live with being vulnerable yourself. Figure out who you are without money and power protecting you. Maybe it'll make you a better person. Maybe it won't. But that's not my problem anymore. Enzo, he ended the call, looked at Autumn. That was merciful. That was enough, she corrected. Revenge doesn't fix anything. I learned that a long time ago. Over the following weeks, they settled into something that resembled a routine. Prenatal appointments every 2 weeks, then every week as she got closer to her due date. Enzo attended every single one, sat in the waiting room if she wanted privacy for the examination, joined her when she wanted company, always asking, never assuming. He learned about her life in increments, her childhood in foster care after her mother died, the string of temporary families that never quite wanted to keep her, the way she'd aged out of the system at 18, with nothing but determination and a high school diploma. She learned about his world in careful doses, the legitimate businesses that funded everything, the less legitimate connections that made those businesses possible, the careful balance he maintained between respectability and ruthlessness. They weren't lovers, weren't quite friends, but they were something. Partners in raising a child neither had planned for but both wanted now that the reality was undeniable. Autumn started feeling safe for the first time in months. The brownstone became home. The security detail became familiar faces. Enzo's presence became expected rather than surprising. She attended her final shift at Bellano Cafe to say goodbye properly. Gina hugged her, slipped an envelope of tips into her hand that the other servers had collected. You deserved better than what happened, Gina said. I'm sorry we didn't protect you. You couldn't have, Autumn replied, but thank you for trying. Bye, Arboulery. She walked out of the cafe with her head high. Enzo waited outside in the car. He'd offered to come in with her. She'd asked him to wait, testing her independence, proving she could still exist in the world without his constant presence. He'd waited, without complaint. The baby came 3 weeks early on a Tuesday morning in February. Autumn woke to contractions at 4 a.m. called Enzo. He arrived in 15 minutes, fully dressed, alert despite the hour. How far apart, he asked. 5 minutes. We're going. The drive to Mount Sinai took 20 minutes through empty pre-dawn streets. Autumn breathed through contractions in the back seat while Enzo held her hand and said nothing, just present. Labour lasted 14 hours, long enough for exhaustion to set in, long enough for fear to creep in around the edges, long enough for Autumn to question everything about her ability to be a mother. 3 months later, when Autumn went into labour, Enzo's hand was the first thing she reached for. The contractions intensified as morning turned to afternoon. Autumn had thought she understood pain after the coffee burns. She'd been wrong. This was something else entirely, a force that overtook her body and left no room for thought or control. Enzo stayed through every contraction. Every moment she squeezed his hand hard enough to leave marks. Every time she said things she'd never remember later about how this was his fault and she hated him, and why had she ever let him touch her. He took it all without flinching, just stayed present, wiped her forehead with cool cloths, reminded her to breathe when she forgot. I can't do this, she gasped between contractions. You're already doing it. I changed my mind. I want to stop. Too late for that. His voice stayed steady, calm, an anchor in the chaos. You're the strongest person I know. You can do this. You don't know that. I do. You've survived everything else life threw at you. This is just one more thing. The doctor checked her progress. 7 centimeters. Then 8. The numbers climbed while Autumn existed in a space between exhaustion and determination. Her body knew what to do even when her mind wanted to surrender. Enzo never left, never suggested he needed a break or food or air, just stayed beside her bed, holding her hand, being present in a way that mattered more than any grand gesture could. At 6:43 in the evening, the doctor said the words that changed everything. It's time to push. Autumn had no energy left, but somehow her body found reserves she didn't know existed. The instinct to bring her child into the world overrode everything else. Enzo moved to support her back, his arms around her, his voice in her ear. You've got this. I'm right here. She pushed and pushed. and pushed until she thought her body would break from the effort. I can see the head, the doctor said. One more big push. Autumn bore down with everything she had left. A sound tore from her throat that was part agony, part triumph. The pressure peaked, then suddenly released. Crying filled the room. Not her crying, the baby's crying. It's a girl, the doctor announced, lifting a tiny, perfect creature into view. A girl, their daughter, red-faced and screaming and absolutely beautiful. The doctor placed her on Autumn's chest, warm, slippery, alive. Autumn's hands came up automatically, cradling this tiny person she'd carried for 9 months but was somehow still a stranger. "Hi," Autumn whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby, I'm your mum." The baby's crying quieted, her eyes opened, unfocused but searching. And in that moment, Autumn understood what love actually meant. Not the romantic kind from movies, something fiercer, more absolute. A love that would burn the world down to keep this child safe. She looked up at Enzo. He was frozen, staring at their daughter with an expression she'd never seen on his face. All the control had shattered. All the carefully maintained composure had dissolved. His eyes were wet. Enzo Salvatore, the man who destroyed his fiancée's life with 3 phone calls and felt nothing. The man whose reputation made grown men nervous. The man who existed in a world of calculated violence and cold authority. He was crying. "Do you want to hold her?" Autumn asked softly. He nodded. Couldn't seem to speak. The nurse helped transfer the baby from Autumn's chest to Enzo's arms. Showed him how to support her head. How to cradle her tiny body. He held his daughter like she was made of glass. Like one wrong move would break her. His large hands that had signed papers condemning businesses and probably people, now gentle and trembling as they touched impossibly small fingers. "She's perfect," he whispered. His voice cracked on the last word. The baby made a small sound, not crying, just existing, being. Her tiny hand wrapped around Enzo's finger and held on. Something in his face transformed. The tears fell freely now. He didn't try to hide them or wipe them away, just let them come while he stared at his daughter with wonder and terror and complete, overwhelming love. "I didn't know," he said. "I didn't know it would feel like this." Autumn understood. She'd spent 9 months preparing, reading books, taking classes, trying to ready herself for motherhood. But nothing had prepared her for the reality, the absolute crushing responsibility of loving something this much. "What's her name?" the nurse asked, pen ready to fill out paperwork. Autumn and Enzo looked at each other. They'd discussed names over the past 3 months, made lists, argued gently about syllables and meanings. But they'd never settled on anything definite. "Sophia," Enzo said. "After my grandmother, if that's okay with you." Autumn tested the name. Sophia. It fit. Strong but soft. Beautiful but not fragile. "Sophia Blake Salvatore," she said. Enzo's eyes met hers.
"You'll give her my name?"
"She's half yours. She should have both." He looked back at Sophia. His thumb brushed against her cheek with infinite gentleness. "I make you a promise," he said to his daughter. "I will protect you. Always, I will be present in your life. I will make mistakes because I'm learning how to be a father, but I will never stop trying. You will always be safe, always be loved. And you will grow up knowing that you're the most important thing in my world." His voice broke again on the last sentence. He looked at Autumn. "Both of you, the most important things in my world." Autumn felt something shift in her chest, not falling in love. That would take time, but recognizing the potential for it. Seeing this man not as the powerful figure who'd walked into her worst moment, but as someone capable of transformation, someone trying to be better than what his world had shaped him to be. "We're going to figure this out," she said. "All of it. Together." "Together," he agreed. The nurse took Sophia for measurements and tests. Enzo helped Autumn get settled in the recovery room. His hands were gentle as he adjusted her pillows, got her water, made sure she was comfortable. "Thank you," she said, "for being here, for staying. There's nowhere else I would be." Sophia was returned to them, swaddled in hospital blankets. They took turns holding her, learning her face, counting her fingers and toes, marveling at eyebrows so small they barely existed, and fingernails like tiny shells. Night fell outside the windows. The hospital quieted. Nurses came and went, checking vitals and offering congratulations. But mostly it was just the 3 of them. Autumn nursed Sophia for the first time, fumbling through it with the nurse's help. Enzo watched, his expression unreadable but intense. When Sophia fell asleep at her breast, milk-drunk and content, Autumn felt exhaustion crash over her like a wave. "Sleep," Enzo said. "I'll watch her. You should rest too.
I will.
But right now, I want to hold my daughter while her mother sleeps." Autumn was too tired to argue. She let herself drift, knowing Sophia was safe, knowing Enzo wouldn't let anything happen to her. As Autumn drifted to sleep, Enzo whispered something only she could hear. "I choose you. I choose this." 6 months after Sophia's birth, Autumn stood behind the counter of her own cafe. Not Bellano's, not someone else's dream, hers. Blake's was smaller than the place where she'd worked before. 12 tables instead of 30. A menu focused on quality over variety. Located in Brooklyn, 3 blocks from the brownstone that had become home, Enzo had offered to buy her anything she wanted, any location, any budget. She'd refused. Taken a loan instead, one she was paying back monthly from her profits. He'd co-signed without argument, understanding what independence meant to her. The cafe opened at 7. By 7:15, the morning rush had begun. Autumn moved through orders with practiced efficiency, her burned arm fully healed now, just faint scars remaining as reminders. Sophia slept in a bassinet behind the counter, 6 months old and already showing signs of her father's intensity. Dark eyes that seemed to see too much. A serious expression even when she smiled. The door chimed. Autumn looked up from the espresso machine. Enzo walked in carrying the diaper bag they'd learned to pack the night before. He wore a suit despite it being Saturday. Some habits were too ingrained to break. "She woke up hungry," he said, lifting Sophia from her car seat. "I tried the bottle." She refused. Autumn wiped her hands on her apron, took her daughter. Sophia immediately rooted toward her breast, making small, demanding sounds. "Give me 5 minutes," Autumn told her assistant manager, a college student named Rita who'd proven reliable and kind. She nursed Sophia in the small office behind the kitchen. Enzo stood in the doorway, watching them with that expression he got sometimes. The one that said he still couldn't quite believe this was real. "I got a call this morning," he said. "About Valentina." Autumn looked up. They didn't talk about Valentina often. That part of their story had ended months ago. "She's in Portland now," Enzo continued, working as a sales associate in a department store, living in a studio apartment. Her family cut her off completely after everything that happened. She's supporting herself. "How do you feel about that?" He considered the question. "I don't feel anything." She made choices, lived with consequences. That's how life works. Sophia finished nursing. Autumn burped her, then handed her to Enzo. He took her automatically now, no more hesitation or fear. Just a father holding his daughter. "You should get back out there," he said. "I'll stay with her. You have meetings. They can wait." This was their balance. His world and hers. His power and her independence. His protection and her strength. Not perfect. They still argued about security protocols and whether Sophia really needed a trust fund before she could walk, but real. Built on respect and shared purpose rather than romance novel fantasies. They'd become lovers again 3 months after Sophia's birth. Slowly. Carefully. Relearning each other's bodies with more honesty than that first night 7 months before everything changed. No pretending this was simple, no hiding the complications. Just 2 people choosing each other despite everything that made it difficult. Autumn returned to the counter. The morning rush continued. She poured coffee and took orders and managed her small corner of Brooklyn with quiet satisfaction. This was hers. She'd built it, earned it. Through the window she watched Manhattan's skyline in the distance. That world still existed. Enzo still moved through it. Still made decisions that affected people's lives, still balanced legitimate business with the darker connections that made it all possible. But he came home every night, to her, to Sophia, to a life that looked nothing like what either of them had planned but somehow worked anyway. That's the story. If it left you thinking, drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done differently? And if you want more stories that stay with you like this one, hit subscribe for more. Later that afternoon, when the lunch rush ended and the cafe quieted, Enzo was still there. Sophia napped in his arms while he answered emails one-handed. Autumn watched them from across the room. Her daughter, the man who'd walked into her worst moment and stayed. She thought about Valentina sometimes. Wondered if humiliation had taught her anything. If losing everything had made her better or just more careful. But mostly, Autumn focused on what she'd gained rather than what someone else had lost. Entitlement had met consequence that day in Bellano Cafe. Cruelty toward vulnerability had been answered with power that chose protection over domination. And a Mafia boss who could destroy lives with phone calls had learned to kneel beside someone who needed help. None of it was fairy tale. There was no wedding. No dramatic declaration. Just two people figuring out how to build something real from the wreckage of one violent morning. Enzo stood still, holding Sophia. Walked to the counter. Coffee? Autumn smiled. Poured him a cup, black, the way he liked it. She slid it across the counter. He reached for it at the same moment. Their hands collided. The cup tipped. Enzo caught it before a single drop spilled. They both smiled. Some endings are just beginnings wearing different clothes.